Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, and welcome to Improve Your Bottom Line with Better Grain Management. My name is Claire Weinsroll, and I'm Communications Manager at the Illinois Soybean Association. Please join me in thanking our corporate partner, Ag Growth International, AGI, for sponsoring our webinar today. If you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer those during and after the presentation today. There will also be a series of poll questions that pop up during today's webinar discussion, and we encourage your participation by responding to those as they arise. We will also be recording today's webinar, which can be viewed on the Illinois Soybean Association YouTube channel following the presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speakers, Larry Voigt, Territory Sales Manager with AGI, and Jeff Feldstuhl, Vice President of Valley View Agri-Systems. Today, Larry and Jeff will host a discussion of how better grain management could increase your return on investment for every bushel stored. Please join me in welcoming Larry and Jeff, and you guys can take it away.
Good afternoon. I'm Larry Voigt. I'm with AGI Digital. I'm joined here with by Jeff Feldstuhl of Valley View Agri-Systems. Valley View is one of our leading dealers in the Illinois area here. We are going to be talking about improving the bottom line through proper conditioning and management of grain storage. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to do this. It's a nice sunny afternoon here in central Illinois, and I know we're just about getting ready to jump into April, so it's getting to be time to put seeds in the ground. So
yeah, we are at the Illinois Soybean Association office today too, so we appreciate the hospitality and Claire for helping us set this up.
Yes, thank you very much, Claire. Good. Mm-hmm. First of all, AGI is a market leader in grain bin management technologies. We do have over 100 years of aeration, storage, and handling expertise. Certainly, offering fans, dryers, aeration equipment, and storage bins. But for now, we're going to be talking about grain conditioning and storage. What we're going to talk about is what is grain conditioning. How do I choose a monitoring system? Why remove moisture? Why add moisture? Can I hydrate my grain safely? When should I run my fans? How much CFM do I need? And how do I increase efficiency and profitability in storage? Jeff, I know a lot of work goes into producing a crop.
Yep.
You're going to plant a crop. You're going to start preparing the soil. You're going to put seeds in the ground. There's a lot of work that goes on through the year as far as inputs, side dressings, different things. And then we get into the harvest process, and there's kind of a feeling when we get it put in the bin that, you can take a bit of a breather then.
Yep.
There it is. We've got it all put away. We had a good crop. The thing is, though, the grain is still alive,
right,
and it's still going to react to the environment around it, the air that surrounds it and so forth. So that's what we're going to get into here today, because I'm going to contend that it's not just soybeans, corn, wheat, whatever in those grain bins. Go ahead. So I'm trying to. But I think, as you can see in the picture here, it's cash. It's the money. I know that with all that work that goes into it, I don't think there's a paycheck until a truck actually crosses the scale and a load is accepted.
Yeah, we spend farmers spend a lot of time and money to get that product in the bin, and that's their bank.
That's right.
It really is.
That's right.
So, and we believe that, conditioning that product in the bin is very important.
So what can we do to take care of that? So what is grain conditioning? Well, certainly it's removing moisture, adding moisture back in, cooling the grain, while it's in the bin, and rewarming. There are some cases where we do rewarm it after it's in there, but that's all done to keep it in a good, safe storage condition. We got a little quick video here, a little quick image here of what a grain bin is. I think you all know that, so I'm going to jump past that. But how do I choose a grain monitoring system? These are things that you probably should do before you even start talking to somebody about it. Think about, what is the ROI? What's the ROI going to be? What's the price to value ratio? And think about your goals and your challenges. What's the harvest process look like? What can we typically run into in the harvest process when it comes to drying and conditioning and so forth? And when are we going to need to market it? And how long is it actually going to be in that bin? Prices change throughout the season. Historically, prices are better late spring, early summer. So, if possible, it's nice to be able to keep it for that long and take advantage of the carry that comes along. But you need to know your CFM, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit.
So important in today's world, right? Especially on older bins that have smaller fans.
Certainly.
It's so important to understand that.
Certainly. We need to know what kind of air is going through there. So when you're talking, you want to be sure your dealer has some real life examples that they can share. And you want to plan ahead for it, because when we get into the summer, there's a lot of things start happening. You want to make sure that bin is ready for the harvest. So nice to have your whole team involved with any interviews that go on. That grain is your livelihood. Everybody's got a little part of the action. It's nice to know how it affects everybody.
Yeah, it's good to talk to anybody that moves or touches the grain, because they may have a different
Right.
situation that they run into that maybe they don't talk about.
Exactly.
So it's very important to talk to everybody.
And a dollar value on your time. I mean, how much time do you spend going out, turning fans on, turning fans off, climbing bins, opening the door, smelling what's going on? I mean, driving around, if your bins are at multiple locations or at remote locations, what kind of time is involved in that? So,
yeah, then when you're not right by the bins, what's going on?
Exactly.
That's the other piece of the puzzle. You might have to, you're in Florida, you're wherever. Next thing you know, you don't know what's going on with your bin either.
That's right.
It's a big deal.
That's right. So, well, there certainly are a number of, you can go ahead and we can change that if you want. We currently at AGI, we're serving more than 3,000 customers nationally. We even go into all around North America. We're monitoring over 12,000 bins. That number is increasing every day. Right here in Illinois, you can see a lot of the locations. We're serving 307 customers, monitoring over 800 bins. So there's a lot of grain out there that's that's under the care.
Yeah, within Valley View, we have over 1,000 bins that we monitor within our company, which is, you talk about those real life experiences. You really don't know until you've been part of that, from the install to service to supporting after that grain gets back in the bin.
Exactly.
Very big deal.
Exactly. So it's, you need to know, what is your bin designed to accomplish? Really, we kind of put them into 3 buckets. There's, a drying bin. We do have a lot of customers who actually do their conditioning in the bin. You want to make sure that you have plenty of CFM to do that. Dry aeration. We may be drying down, maybe we want to dry down to 16.5 or 17 or wherever it is, depending on the bin size. And maybe we're going to finish it off in the bin, depending on how long it's going to be stored there and when we're going to need to market it. An aeration bin, generally these are the big ones. The grain is pretty well dried when we put it in there, but we want to make sure we've got the airflow to go through there to keep it cool. and to keep it ready for market.
Yeah.
So,
One big piece that we'll talk about later is adding moisture back in, right? So if you can dry in a bin, you can also add moisture back in. So, but those numbers, the CFM numbers, are very critical in being successful in doing any of these things, either drying or hydrating. So,
exactly.
and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a little bit.
So why do we want to remove moisture? Well, obviously to keep it in grain in a safe condition. Safe storage through lab testing and so forth. Safe storage is at about 65% relative humidity. But at harvest time, a lot of times, most of the grain, it's coming in around, it's going to be about 90%. And that translates down into the moisture content of the grain. So we need to get it dried down from 90% down to 65%. And so you can see at those, at what are a lot of times market conditions, 15%, 13%, if we're storing at that relative humidity, that's kind of the safe storage area. But there can be variations to that, and we're going to talk about that as we get into it. Okay.
See if it'll look. There we go.
So why do we want a cool grain? Well, obviously, cooler grain, drier grain stores longer. So if we can get down in that 40 to 50 degree range, that's going to increase the shelf life of the grain mass, and that's when respiration is going to be reduced. It's also good for keeping the bug population down, put them in a dormant state, even kill some of the insects when we get down on those temperatures. And as the temperature increases, then your safe storage moisture is going to decrease. So it's going to make it more susceptible to mold growth. So also helps to avoid condensation during the winter. When we get that sun beating down on the roof, kind of warms it up. We can get that bin rain where it's actually raining in there, so to speak. And, we kind of get that crustiness up on top. We want to stay away from that. So
one thing, Larry, that you showed me last week, the system, automation in the bins, you can bring grain down dramatically. I've done this personally myself with some of our customers where their grain's, 65, 70 degrees, and we get these cool nights, you can bring it down to 40, 30 degrees really quick. But you showed me a customer in Wisconsin that was at 9 degrees.
9 degrees.
Yeah, and you told me that lady does that all the time.
They had some frozen stuff in there. So.
Yeah, every year she takes it down to as cold as it'll get, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I never saw one that low in single digits, but that's pretty crazy.
So she said that's the way we do it here.
Yeah, that's good. That's
So,
Wisconsin for you. We're not far away from there.
Yeah. So what we're showing here, when relative humidity increases, it's not necessarily, and we're going to talk about this in a little more detail here. Even though we're at what we would call market moistures, that may not necessarily be the safest place to keep it. So if we want to add moisture back into it, it's nice to know when are we going to market it, and if we can do that in a shorter time frame. Of course, it depends on the bin size and fan power, but if we can get to, let's say, 3 weeks to a month or so from market time and wait to increase that moisture, then we can have safer storage through the colder months. So. So reducing shrink. And how do we calculate shrink? Well, it would be the number of bushels times the shrink factor. And with soybeans, that shrink factor is 1.33. What that means is 1% of moisture in a soybean adds 1.33 to the weighted volume. So we take that and we multiply that times the point gained in the market price. So you can see in 50,000 bushels of soybeans, if we're at 10% and we have the ability to bring that up to 13%, we're looking at almost $24,000 in increased value for that grain. So
yeah, and it's so important. Adding moisture is all about the time when you're going to market, but also about the weather, right? So in the winter, near impossible to add moisture because the air is frozen, right? So,
Right.
but if you keep that grain, you cool it down, you keep it longer, you guys start selling, right around plant season, a little bit later. You take that moisture back up to that desired, that sweet spot of 13%, then you get more money, you get more product, and everybody's happier when it's all said and done.
Mm-hmm. Kind of nice to get an extra truckload out of a bin.
Absolutely.
So you can see we got two identical bins here, and we're putting a price tag on those. And like we said, that's the bank. But there's also other ways to gain value there. And that would be in the safety, not having to climb it, not having to go in it for any reason.
Yeah.
And energy savings. No sense running the fan if we're going to blow air that's not doing us any good, or might even be hurting us a little bit with the storage. So this is an actual example, an actual customer result of a bin over in Iowa. This came through 21,000 bushels. So put soybeans in there, like in the 9 and 10% range, and through proper management, we're able to bring them up to 13%. So overall, we had various levels in there. It wasn't 10% top to bottom, but we had various levels in there. But as on the whole, being able to bring that up a couple of points, there was a gain of over $6,000 in that bin, or about 31 cents a bushel.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got times like this where the markets, aren't the most favorable, it's nice to get out of it as much as we can. Nice to get that extra. So what's needed to achieve good conditioning? Knowing the equilibrium moisture content. That's a characteristic of the grain. We're going to get into that a little bit more, talk about that. Many of you may know what it is already, but we are going to talk about that, the importance of it, the variations and so forth. But you want to make sure you got good fans, the right fans on there to do what you want to do, whether you're drying or cooling, knowing that CFM.
Right.
And we've got tools that we can help you with that, to determine that. A good monitoring system. And a good monitoring system is going to give you readings of both temperature and moisture, because we're doing both in the conditioning. And the more data that's in there, the better. The more that we know about that grain mass, the better we can do. A good ventilation system, obviously. If we're putting air into the bin, we got to make sure that we can get air out of the bin as well. So
yeah, some older bins don't have any vents on them.
That's right.
Right.
That's
so
right.
You got to make sure you push that air out.
Yep. So, and we want to keep a proper grain mass configuration. We want to make sure that, obviously if we can be, we're level on the top, or if we've got a bowl in the middle, or if we've got some high spots in there, kind of that's all going to determine. Air is going to follow the path of least resistance.
Right. Just like
so. We want to know where that air is going. So making sure we can get it through the grain mask. So, and of course, following the proper procedures based on the weather the weather that we've got. So let's talk, we're going to talk a little bit more about equilibrium moisture content. All grains do have an EMC known to them. And we've done a lot of testing in our lab over in Lenexa, Kansas, where we've run literally thousands of varieties through our lab. And there's a variation there, but the simple view of what is EMC is we can take a soybean or a kernel of corn or a grain of wheat or whatever, and you can set it on your kitchen table, and no matter how wet it is or no matter how dry it is, if you leave it sit there, eventually it's either going to give off moisture or it's going to take in moisture to be exactly what it is, what's in your kitchen. So that's the whole concept of conditioning and storage, is surrounding the grain with air that you want that grain to be like. So
yeah, I mean, it's all about the air going in and around that product and making sure that it's controlled. If it's not controlled, then you don't know what your results are going to be.
Exactly. So, and why it is important, obviously we just talked about that. But it's also important to know the variations. That gives information about whether the grain, whether in the present condition, whether it's going to absorb moisture or give moisture off. And it also determines what air do we want to surround it with in order to get the condition that we want. So kind of a visual there of how a soybeans are very responsive. They'll take on moisture throughout the whole soybean. So, this chart is taken from results in our lab in Lenexa through testing various varieties and so forth. And we're not endorsing a particular variety or picking on a particular variety here, but this just goes to show at relative humidity of 65%, these are actually the safe storage moistures of those particular grains. So it's important to know that so that you may want it at a good market moisture, but that might actually not be safe for storing it in the bin over a long period of time. So it's important to know these.
And with the system, the AGI SureTrack Bin Manager system, it actually lets you select that variety. Larry talked about the lab that they do in Lenexa, that they test this. They actually request a 5-gallon bucket of your product right after you harvest it, and then they actually test it, and they put that variety into your platform, and that actually matters. I worked with a popcorn company over in Indiana, the Orville Redenbacher brand, and they were using, this is in 2019, they were using a 2016 sample or variety, and then they had a 2019 variety, but they weren't using it, and they were off 1.5 of moisture inside that system. So all we did literally is selected that different variety, and it took it right back to where it needed to be. But every year is a different year from a growing standpoint. Even though maybe it's the same exact variety, 3 years ago that it is today, something maybe has changed with that variety over time.
Yeah.
So
could even be something in the growing process.
Absolutely. Dirt, soil, whatever. There's so many different characteristics of getting that product out of the field and into that bin, and then that ability to absorb or remove moisture.
So it's nice to have that data in your system so that it knows exactly what's in that bin.
Yeah, and SureTrack does that for free.
Right.
Which is great, but it's all about getting a better result with that product. So very important.
So these are just some guidelines, university guidelines, industry standards as far as, if you're doing natural air drying in the bin. Now this relates a little bit more to corn. If you're going to put 20% corn in that bin, you really need at least 1 CFM of air. And of course, what we're talking about is cubic foot per minute per bushel of air going over that grain. And you really shouldn't put it any deeper than 25 feet.
Yeah.
Now
today's world, we see a lot of 40-foot deep grain bins that we have cables in with 1 CFM that works very well. So, bins are bigger today. People put larger fans on. You verify what kind of floors you have. There's all kinds of things that you can take into consideration to take those university studies and listen to them and learn from them. But in reality, we have very good success with taller bins and larger bins too. So.
The dry aeration, you like about a 0.5 CFM in there, and what we've actually seen when hydrating grains, you can get by with a lower CFM. So in that 0.5 CFM to 1 CFM range, you can get a nice result with hydration. So,
and one thing about CFM, Larry, is that as you fill your bin, you have a much greater CFM. If it's rated at 1 CFM for a full bin, then if you're half full, you're going to have a lot more CFM too.
Right.
You can push a lot more air through, which helps you maybe get some of that wetter grain dried, or actually do some hydration if you have a market that's coming up very soon. So.
Yep. It certainly is very dependent on the depth of the grain.
Yep, absolutely.
Depth of the grain. So these are some nice charts that we can provide. But as you can see, we've got moisture levels over the top. We've got temperatures on the side. Obviously, cooler and drier stores longer, but it's nice to have a reference like this, and it's nice to have, to be able to be working with your system, knowing what grain exists. Now, this is actually with stagnant air, so a little bit of a different, but we can provide these, to anyone who'd like to ask us for them.
There's a lot out there with university studies as well. There's a little bit of variation in the charts, but they're all pretty much somewhat consistent. Obviously, cooler and drier always last longer. So.
Certainly. So there's a question: when should I run fans? And in talking with growers over the past number of years, we've had. You hear a lot of things out there. There's some generational things. Well, we've done it this way for years, or we fill the bin up, we turn the fans on for a month, we let it run, 2 months, whatever. If the sun's out, we turn the fans on. If it's raining, we turn them off, whatever. You hear all kinds of things, but this is just kind of a graphic. And I don't want somebody to think that we're saying that the best air is every day from 9 to noon and from 5 to 7 in the afternoon. That this is just an example that throughout the course of a day, there's good air and there's bad air. So it's nice to optimize that fan time, particularly, you're paying for electricity going through that fan.
Yep.
So it's nice to know that it's running or not running when it's most appropriate.
Yeah, so Larry, just a quick story here. Had a customer late last year down in Texas call. Valley View, we're we have offices in Mississippi, Arkansas, and then also in Illinois here, and we support customers across we call it the Rice Belt and the Corn Belt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I had a customer down in Texas that actually is a farm management company, and it's the first year he's been using the system. He called me and he goes, Jeff, he goes, I'm at 17% in this rice. I've got to get it down. I'm gonna turn my fans on automatic. I don't think they're running enough. I said, Russell, we've had this conversation many times. I said, you can do what you want, right? It's your grain, it's your system. But I said, we need to keep an eye on it, right? 3 days later, one of his employees called me and said, he goes, should these fans be running? It's raining now. I said, they shouldn't be, but your boss turned them into manual mode and just let them run. So, again, we go back to that value of your time. You can't always be around these facilities all the time. And you can't always make those changes of that EMC all day long, every day of the week. And that's why the system, any kind of automation system that manages, temperature, weather, and the air inside the bin will do this for you. It's just so important to let a product do what it's designed to do and not override it. And that situation was a perfect example.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think it's nice too when you've had that long day. It's been a rough day. I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, whenever you crawl into bed. It feels so good to lay down, boy, and then all of a sudden, oops, did I turn that fan on?
yeah.
Oops, did I turn that fan off? And there you go, got to crawl out and go check it.
Yeah.
So.
And for us as a dealer, that first year of having a system, there's a lot of questions, right? And there's nothing better than us being able to look at a bin for a customer, even when they don't even know we're looking at them, and telling them, you know what, it's all good. I have a customer over in Western Illinois. If he shuts the power off on his fans, he texts me and say, hey, I'm shutting the power off right now in case you notice it, right? He'll go no communication. But that first year is a lot of questions, a lot of answers, a lot of, it's the old, why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? And there's reasons why. There's so much technology built into these systems that they know what to do based on everything they see around them. So
it's nice to have those extra eyes on the bin.
That sure is. Sure is.
So.
I might close that question.
There it goes.
Slide. There we go.
So we'll talk just a little bit about AGI Bin Manager functionality. It is automated grain conditioning, and the user sets targets, target temperature, target moisture. We have sensors that are down in the grain, and those sensors, every sensor on every cable is going to be monitoring both temperature and moisture. And because the system knows which sensors are in grain and which are not, it's able to calculate a bushels inventory.
Mhm.
Now, I do want to point out that that takes time. It's the course of air running through the bin and then air stabilizing the bin that actually calculates those bushels. So it's not an instantaneous thing, and I don't want anybody to think that this is a system where they can ride in the combine and watch and look at their phone and watch their bin fill up.
Right.
So,
Yep.
but the data is accessible on any smart device where you've got web connectivity. You know, wherever you're at, you can be looking at the bins, checking them out. You're also going to get alert messages if things start to happen. If it wants to run the fan and we don't detect static pressure, we're going to let you know that the fan's not running. And it's a closed loop system. And what does that mean? That means that everything that's needed to run the system is at the bin site itself. So if communication goes down for any reason, the bin continues to work. It's not dependent on anything, any kind of instruction that's coming out of the cloud. It's conditioning at the bin. So we're using cell phone systems to send the data out to the cloud so that you can access it anywhere, so that we can send those alert messages out and so forth. So
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one thing. I guess the closed loop system is very important. So let's say that for some reason, there's multiple bins on the site and somebody shuts off one of the bins and it doesn't communicate any longer. The rest of the bins are still going to do what they're supposed to do, right? So whatever settings you had on that, the system will still do that.
Larry and Jeff, we did just get a question in that says, how does the system know when to turn the fans on and off?
Okay, good question. Of course, as I mentioned, we've got the sensors that are in grain so that we know the existing condition of the grain. That's very important. Then there's a weather device on the outside of the bin that's detecting relative humidity and temperature. So based on the target that you set for temperature and moisture, it's going to be looking for the right air. And when that right air comes, it's going to turn the fan on automatically. And after 15 minutes, it no longer is looking at the weather data, but it's looking at the plenum data. Because as you know, when you squeeze air down underneath the bin, that's going to heat it up some. It's going to dry it out some. So that's the real air that you're pushing through. So after it has time to stabilize on the plenum ratings, then that's actually what we're looking at to condition the grain. So, and then over the course of time, if that air changes, that's detected by a sensor down in the plenum. It's confirmed by the weather sensor, and then the fans would go off. So,
and the first part of the puzzle is you are going to set a parameter within the system, right? So if you're drying grain and you want to dry it, let's say that your beans came in at 15%, and you want to bring them down to 13, which is unusual, but if you wanted to do that, you would actually set a target of 13%. Same thing for hydration, you would set that target for 13%. So those settings then correlate to looking at the grain through the sensors, and then the weather station and the plenum sensor are devices that basically say, yes, it's a good time to run because you have told me via the settings to turn on if my weather outside and the plenum air is better than what I'm seeing inside the bin. So, within that system, there's an auto dry and cool mode. There's an auto cool mode. There's an auto hydrate mode. And there's a few other modes too, but those are probably the most used modes, right, within the system. It's very simple. It takes literally 2 minutes to establish those settings. It's in the platform. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from a computer. I can look at it for the customer. I will never change a setting unless I have permission from a customer. That's something that I will never do. And when I do change it, I always tell them we changed it. And if I have to go look at it again, I usually put a reminder in my calendar to say, go look at this in 24 hours, go look at it in 2 days, whatever. So, you know, and all the technology behind the system, there's a lot of software, right? So when you do all this stuff and you still don't see the results that you think you should get, there's a reason for that, right? So when it's nice and sunny like it is today and your fans aren't running, you think you should be removing some moisture from your bin, there's a reason for it. And I will tell you from experience, the reasons are really accurate. Again, the system takes all that worry and effort out of you from having to turn your bins on, as long as you set your settings right? But we go through training with every customer. SureTrack AGI Bin Manager goes through training with every customer. We're always available. I've talked to people, you know, I always tell them I go to church at 10:30 on Sunday mornings and I'm not available for an hour and a half during that time typically. But text me, call me. You know, the customer service reps at AGI are available to us all the time. I sometimes wish they would take a break, but they seem not to. So it's a lot of technology, but there's parts and pieces that make that technology work.
And we did have a follow-up question to that. Are the settings for that in the cloud?
No, the settings are at the bin itself. Well, you can set them from anywhere. You can set them remotely, but it actually changes the setting with the brain box that's at the bin site, the control box. So
yeah, so
I hope I said that right.
Yeah, you don't need to be next to the bin to change your settings.
No, you know, you can change it from anywhere.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, the value proposition behind the bin manager, number one has got to be safety. Unfortunately, things happen every year, but anything that can be done to reduce the need to enter the bin is a plus. Stay out of the bin. We really don't like to see that. And even reducing the need to climb the bin.
Right.
You know, climbing that, you know, unfortunately, you know, things have happened there as well. From a profitability standpoint, you know, we've touched on how rehydration, you know, can generate additional dollars. Shrink management also helps that. You know, when you look at corn, if you're taking corn in at 12, 13%, you know, it's actually giving money away. So reduced energy costs. I'm sure when you look at that electric bill, you know, there's a lot of dollars that can be saved there. So
Larry, and the higher quality. I remember one of the first customers we ever went to get to together with, the Kirkens out in Western Illinois. You know, the dad, we're sitting at our kitchen table, the dad's there, the son's there, the mom's there. And that dad is just stirrator, right? Bud was stirrator. And after about an hour, you know, but he's building a new bin and he's like, I can't put a stirrator in a 48-foot bin. We're like, you don't need to, right? And he finally admitted to his son while we're sitting there that, you know what, your corn does look better and weigh a little bit more than my stirrator bins do. So that's what they're using now is the system, right? With the right fans. And it just works. You know, stirrators are, you know, they had a place in time, I think. I think today there's other tools that are better than that product. So yeah, that was great. That was a great message that I saw that day. He said that corn looks so much better and test weights so much better in my son's bins. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, good to hear those things. So
it is.
Peace of mind is a biggie. Boy, what is the value you can put on that? Visibility from anywhere, you know, knowing what's going on. And I really can't say enough about the customer support that comes out of our office in Lenexa. Jeff, I know you guys do a tremendous job with your customers, and we've got a crew over in Lenexa that, you know, they really go above and beyond, helping customers, you know, manage the conditioning of their grain and so forth. So,
we're a firm believer in customer support. That's why we do, you know, install, service, and support after the fact. And just you have to have that whole loop to take care of the customer, right?
Right.
You've got to do it. And then AGI does a great job. We have dedicated customer people that work with us only. And they do get overwhelmed, right? They do get to the point sometimes where, you know, harvest is going on across the US and there's just too much, just like anybody. But with our support and their support, we tag team it a lot. You know, it's a busy time of year, and it's not harvest always. It's a lot of times after the bins are full, because that's really when the system is valuable. So you think it's going to be really busy when you're out in the fields, you know, pulling that product out of the field, but a lot of times it's right after that. But you know, when Mississippi's starting, Illinois is not starting yet. So when Illinois starts, Mississippi's worried about that product inside that bin. And you know, beans are different than corn, and there's all kinds of activities that happens. But you know, the key is customer support. Really is. It's so important.
We like that efficiency and sustainability because it's nice if we can maximize the profitability on the farm. Nice to know we can have something to pass on to the next generation, so we can continue to see that family farm operation out there. You might be wondering about these colorful little graphics here on the right-hand side. I like to talk about that a little bit. That is a personal customer of mine, a personal customer experience that I took some special interest in. What you're seeing there with those colors, the coloration on the graphic on the left, that's showing, the coloration is just showing the distance from the target that was set. And this is soybean bin down in East Central Illinois, more southern East Central Illinois. 100,000 bushel bin. So, you know, we talked earlier about, you know, bin sizes and fan power. You know, this is one that kind of defied the logic there for a while, but they filled it about the middle of October, and you can see the different variations there. Green means that it's in condition. Yellow means we're a little bit drier. Red means even drier yet. And then in just 60 days in this bin, on December 15th, you can see in that graphic on the right-hand side, you know, we were in the 12% from top to bottom. And it was really nice. This customer actually called me up in late January, February, when he started taking loads down to the river. And he says, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm taking loads down to the river, and I'm running 12.4 to 12.8 in every load." He was just really thrilled with that. So finally, again, it's just so important to touch on safety and what is that worth. Anything we can do to eliminate being in the bin. And a lot of times, why do we go in the bin? Because there's a problem in there that we got to take care of. So anything that we can do to reduce those problems so that we don't have to get in there, you know, that's a big savings. So
yeah, and it's not always just, you know, it's the grain isn't spoiled when it goes in there, but it's not just airflow. I mean, it's not just fans. It can be floors, it can be supports, it can be venting. There's all kinds of reasons why that grain goes out of condition. But typically it starts with the fan size, right? And that's CFM. And that's, again, why we've talked about that today a little bit, that if you can't push the air all the way through the bin, you're going to have issues, right? So that's why it's important to get that CFM, understand how the air is flowing into the bin, how it's flowing out of the bin. So,
and there's a service that we like to provide, and that brings us to the point of the message today. We would like to have the opportunity, and we do this at no charge, to come on farm and to do a safe storage assessment, where we would come on there, we would utilize modeling tools and so forth, so that you could learn what your CFM is, what your bin is capable of, what value can be expected from the conditioning that can go on in that grain. We can go through an educational experience to talk about storage practices and so forth. And being able to plan for success, you know, having a plan on how to work with the storage, you know, depending, I mean, harvest changes every year. So it's nice to know what a bin's capable of. It's also nice to know that you can have a reference, someone that you can talk to say, hey, here's the condition I'm facing. You know, what can we do to, you know, to mitigate those conditions and maximize our resources here. So What would be included? We'd like to come on site and do an aeration inspection. Our engineers have created an aeration simulator where we can put in bin diameters, sidewall height. We can put in your fan specs, and we can run a grain scenario through that. You know, we could say, well, what if I'm putting 10% soybeans in this bin? You know, what could I expect as far as being able to put moisture back in them? What that simulator will do is we're going to look at the last 10 years of weather history for your town, for your zip code. And we're going to look at the last 10 years and say, okay, here's the performance you could have expected. You know, there may be a situation where we might have to look at doing a little bit something different with fan power, maybe a low temp heat, anything like that. So we'll review those university guidelines as they pertain to your area. Talk about best storage practices, help set some goals. You know, how can we use this? And of course, you know, we are going to demonstrate the AGI products, you know, for conditioning and monitoring the grain so that, you know, we like to think we can demonstrate a value there. So you can see, you know, what that capability would be in your particular storage. So.
Yeah, so, you know, Larry and I have done these separate together, and really it's all about understanding what's on your site, what's on your bin site. You know, a lot of times you have restrictions, right? You've only got single phase power, so you can only go so big in fans. Maybe fans are older. We still see concrete blocks under floors. We all know that restricts airflow. I had a customer 8 miles from our office, and they had some high speed centrifugal fans on there and kept kicking on the overload, and they just had the wrong perf on their floor, right? They wanted to be able to clean the floor easy. So they went to a really small perforation in the floor, but it wouldn't let all that air come through the bin. And, you know, we literally swapped out their floor and took care of it. So they've been fighting that for 4 years. And, you know, someone didn't come out and understand what was going on. They were looking at, you know, the issue and not the root cause. And these activities that Larry's identified here is just helps you a lot understanding what's going on in your products. Yeah, so
it's nice to be able to spray water on the fire and not the smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
absolutely.
So, if you would be interested in that no obligation on-farm storage assessment, you know, here's our contact information. We would be more than happy to connect with you and come out on farm to go through those things with you.
Yeah, we can divide and conquer, come together, doesn't matter, right? So our office is south of Springfield in Illinois here, and Larry lives, what, 5 miles from the Soybean Association?
I live right here in Normal.
Yeah, you're close.
So
yeah,
pretty much in the middle of the state. I like to think I can get to about anywhere in the state pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we're all over Illinois constantly, right? Yeah. So it's a great state. It's a large state, but there's a lot of different products out there. And, you know, soybeans are so important to our country and the world. And we believe that the better quality coming out of that grain bin is better for everyone when it's all said and done. So.
Well, thanks so much, Larry and Jeff. We do have a few questions. So I'm going to encourage the audience that if you have a question, please go ahead and type it into that Q&A function, and we'll try to get to as many as we can in the time that we have left. The first question we have is, on average, how long does it take to hydrate beans from 10 to 13%?
Okay, the answer to that is many faceted. It's going to depend on your bin size, your fan power, your grain depth, and the air that nature gives us, and the time frame that you're looking at. Typically, it's going to be faster in the spring than it would be in the winter time. Although I did just show you the example of the customer down near, you know, kind of in the Effingham, Olney area that was able to turn it from October 15th to December 15th. So that's a variable question. And the thing is, with that aeration simulator, we can actually put some science to that and, you know, and give a a better answer to that question. So
Yeah, and that simulator works so well. I mean,
Mhm.
it's pretty, you know, it goes by zip code, so it's very focused on wherever that bin is. And then that 10 years of weather data that pulls into it. Take all the parameters of the bin that we're evaluating, and it spits out some pretty good results and tells you, are we good to go or not? Typically what we see is when you start hydrating, next thing you know, whoever you've got your contract with, they always try to pull stuff out a little bit quicker than the time that you have to rehydrate as best you can. So.
Thank you. A couple questions about the system itself. How many bins can be operated from the system?
Each bin is operated individually, and the reason for that is because the grain is different. Even if it's soybeans in one bin and soybeans in the other bin, the condition of those soybeans can be different from bin to bin. The system does have one control unit that's the coordinator of the entire system, and one coordinator can oversee up to 20 bins in one what we would call a cluster. So, and that would be at one location.
The platform itself can handle all your bins.
Certainly.
We've got customers with 25, 30 bins on the platform. They can see them all on the platform. I'm trying to think of the customer that was it 40, 45?
Yeah, I've got one customer with over 50.
Yeah. But each unit, like Larry said, it's an individual system, right? But then the platform, you can see all your bins and control all your bins from that platform device, from basically your phone or your computer.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, is there a minimum size of bin to make the return on investment feasible? For example, a 7,000 or 8,000 bushel bin, is it practical to look at those?
It's worth looking at. It
Yeah.
probably depends more on the value of the product that's in the bin. As an example, I have customers that have organic edible beans, and those run about $70 to $80 per hundredweight. So certainly, you know, they're worth protecting. You know, they're worth knowing what's going on. So
we see that with popcorn too. You know, if it's not the right moisture, you don't get to drop it off at the facility that's processing it, because they have to have it at a certain moisture to pop. So
yeah, they might not even take it.
But you know, quoting is relatively easy for us. The ROI is all about what Larry said, is what's in that bin.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's something we would do with an on-site assessment, is we would go through that ROI model, you know, to see if it does make any sense or not.
Yeah, I've done an experiment with Beck's seeds over in Atlanta, Indiana, and it was a 7,000 bushel bin, two of those, and you know, we did some really good stuff with them.
So you mentioned popcorn. Does this system also work for corn bins?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we actually there are probably a couple of dozen different types of grain that our system works with. Corn, of course, soybeans, wheat,
Rice,
pistachios, rice,
milo, sorghum.
You know, sorghum.
Yep.
I've seen pinto beans, black beans. You know, just almost anything that you can put a bin. Believe it or not, and I know this is kind of chasing a rabbit off on the side, but I have a customer up in Michigan that it's an asphalt company, but they mix plastic. They mix shredded plastic. It's about the consistency of rice. They mix that in their asphalt mix, and they import that in bags. And a lot of times it comes in and it's damp, and it has to be completely dry to be mixed with asphalt. And believe it or not, they have a 12-foot diameter bin that's 7 rings tall. They have a 5-horse high-speed centrifugal fan, and they dry that plastic in that bin, managed with a bin manager, to go into that asphalt. So it's wild what can be done with it. So
yeah. So Claire, when you know, it can be a bean bin this year or corn bin next year,
right.
And basically in your settings, you have a commodity that you select, and that's all the above commodities we just talked about. And then you select your variety.
Mhm.
So, this year it's beans, next year it's corn. We can run aeration models on both of those products in that same bin to make sure that, you're going to get the results that you want based on the CFM that you have in the bin. So yeah, absolutely. Corn's probably, a lot of people draw a lot of corn in it. Corn and beans are the two biggies. Obviously down
Right.
south where one of our offices are, rice is a big deal for us too.
Great. We have one final question in the queue here, and it says, what is the average cost per bushel for your system?
Well, I don't know, because that can be variable, depending on the
Let's do a
bin
calculation
size.
now.
But you got something there, Jeff?
50,000 bushel bin. Yeah, would you say that's about right?
Hmm,
A little high, right? 50,000.
doing a little calculating here.
Yeah. So the cables vary, right? So each size of bin has X number of cables. So the larger diameter bin, the more cables. The taller the bin, the more cables. But I would say you're $2 to $3. Would you say that's fair? Bushels?
$2 to $3 a bushel?
Yeah. What do you say?
Oh, I think I was gonna say, I've seen it as low as 3 cents a bushel.
Oh, yeah, no, sure, yeah. But I'm talking, if you had a 50,000 bushel bin
Mhm.
and you were going to.
Oh, you're talking about a one-time cost?
Yep,
Okay.
one-time cost, absolutely. So, so a 50,000 bushel bin, it's gonna probably cost, $12,000 to $15,000, depending on the number of cables, the height of the bin, etc. We like 48-foot bins, seems to be a sweet spot, but it works great in smaller bins. Larger bins cost more because more cables. But again, we can do a quote relatively easy.
Yeah.
And we still like to see what's going on in your bin, but we can give you a quote no matter what you have. So
Yeah,
exactly.
I have customers with everything from a 24-foot diameter all the way up to 105-foot diameter, so.
Yep. Yeah, we've got some pretty big bins around here down by Decatur. So
Great.
So there's some variation.
We had one final question slide in before I turn it over to you both for final thoughts, and it says, how do the cables get installed in the bin?
Okay, good question. We actually install through the top of the roof. If I can figure this
A whole lot
out.
of YouTube videos out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube videos. If you search SureTrack cable installation on YouTube, you'll see some videos on that. But actually, what's done, we're gonna, we'll put about a 2-inch hole in a valley in the roof of the bin. We're gonna put a rubber grommet in there for sealing and for protection. We drop the cable down in, and the nice thing is, being installed that way, we can service the cable after it's installed. Now, of course, you have to wait till the bin's empty, but our sensors are individually replaceable, and that's a cost of ownership value. But so then there's also a seal boot that's on the cable, and it's all sealed down. And then there's an angle iron bracket that goes across the ribs. So the weight of the cable is actually distributed out to the rib. So that's nice because it's simple to install. It can be installed at just about any time, and it can be serviced after the fact. So.
And all of our crews are, the people that do installs are certified for rope movement on the bins from all the way down to rappelling, right? They can rappel down the side of the bin. So you're up top. We're very safe. We have harnesses. We have, we tie off on the top with cables, and then we use a rope and a descender to actually get to the position. Each cable goes to a certain spot in the roof based on the diameter and based on the length of that cable. So as Larry said, we put that hole in, and I've never in my life seen one of these leak. That foam seal that's on top of that cable that holds it in place is extraordinary. It's probably 1.5 inches thick, Larry. Pulls down really tight.
Yeah.
Just never witnessed any leaking whatsoever. The advantage to this is some people want them hung inside, and in reality, you can only do that when you're building the bin. So the beauty of this is you can install them on any bin at any time. Getting to the top in the inside of the roof of a bin is pretty difficult to do once it's built. So being on top of the bin, being safe on top of the bin, and having that pattern that we need to stick to, distance based on the length of cable size of the bin, it makes install very, very, very clean and very precise.
All right, well, we are right at the hour. Larry, Jeff, any final thoughts before we close out today?
Well, we want to thank everybody
Yeah.
for taking time to join us.
Yeah.
We would really look forward to coming out and visiting with any of you and taking you through an on-farm storage assessment. Claire, we certainly want to thank you and all the folks at the Illinois Soybean Association here for allowing us to do this and making your facility available for us. So
We appreciate that immensely.
Anything else, Jeff?
No, it's all about, you talked about selecting that product, right? This product has been around for years. It's one of the oldest products. It's a company that's committed to the product. You'll see a lot of new companies coming out there with this kind of product, but really there's not many that have been in business as long as AGI. AGI owns the market. They have more systems than anyone. Valley View, we have more systems than anyone under our belt. So it's all about trusting and believing, and knowing that that company will be there 5 years from now to support you and to support that product that you purchased. So that's our intentions, to take care of you today and tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I want to take another moment to thank Larry and Jeff for their presentation today, and a special thank you to our corporate partner AGI for sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you all for tuning in, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.